My name is Regan Casey. I chose to teach you about the British Virgin Islands. The British Virgin Islands, aka the BVIs, is one of my favorite spots in the world, a place where I made so many memories with my family that led me to want to learn more. So, to begin, the BVIs consist of four larger islands. We have Tortola, Anegada, Virgin Gorda, and Jost Van Dyke, with Tortola being the biggest. If you get the chance to go, you'll see that Virgin Gorda, Tortola, and Jost Van Dyke are really mountainous, whereas Anegada is really flat. So you'll know if you're on Anegada if you're there. And along the way, there are also 32 smaller islands. So the total area of the colony is 59 square miles, has a population of roughly 28,000, and it's mild for the most part with an average temperature of about 78 degrees. The official language on the island is English, however, an English-based Creole is used more often, along with Virgin Islands Creole English. So, to continue, we're going to look at the four aspects of identity that make up the BVIs. First, we have the history. So, according to the government of the Virgin Islands, the history of the island is usually broken up into 5 parts. We have the pre-Columbian settlement, the European settlement, the British control, the emancipation, and the modern state. So Christopher Columbus discovered these islands in 1492, but didn't really do much else after that. Notably, we have the British colonizing after they overtook the Dutch settlers that found it after Christopher Columbus. But these islands, such as Virgin Gorda and Tortola, were settled to be controlled by plantation owners. That is until the slaves revolted, as we'll learn later, and the Abolition Act was passed. The two islands became a part of the BVIs once and for all. And then in modern times, 1950 was a huge year because the island gained self-government. Next, we'll look at the sociology. So when I began looking into the sociology of the BVIs, I took a second and thought about what I knew from my experience. I knew that the BVIs were full of people who are down to earth and so proud to be from there. I kind of wanted to learn how they act and communicate and structure their days. So first, I looked into their religion. So their religious affiliations are mostly with Protestant denomination. The great majority of the British Virgin Islands are descendants of African slaves. Also, their education is free for children between the ages of 5 and 13, but then there are several institutes of higher learning on the islands as other options. Then we have sailing. Sailing is the favorite sport of the British Virgin Islands, and it's been called the sailing capital of the Caribbean. It hosts the spring sailing regatta every year, which brings in so many tourists. That then leads into our third aspect, economics. As I stated before, I'm learning about the BVIs because I visited, therefore I was a tourist. The economy thrives off of tourism. Tourism is based on nearly a perfect climate, the sparkling beaches, the vegetation, and it provides about half of the island's income and is the largest employer on the island. Then we also have the financial services sector that has collected incorporation fees from foreign businesses that register on the islands, which brings in some more positives for the economy. Then we have our exports and our imports. Exports are a little bit more scarce. We have fresh fish, rum, sand, and gravel, along with charcoal, fruits, and vegetables, but our imports come in a lot more. We have food, beverages, machinery, motor vehicles, building materials, etc. Now we're going to talk about our fourth aspect, healthcare. The territory's healthcare system has rapidly become diverse and continues to stay on par with global medical advances, which is a huge positive for people looking to go visit and live there. The number one hospital is located on Tortola, and it's called Peebles Hospital. It is the number one access to healthcare on all of the islands. It can be accessed via helicopter or ferry, and it was renovated in 2014, offering 24-hour emergency and ambulance services, along with a pharmacy, physical therapy unit, psychiatric ward, etc. For emergencies, you're told to call 911, and if things get worse, St. Thomas is just a 45-minute ferry ride away. So to kind of wrap that up, I wanted to touch on Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma was one of the worst natural disasters to ever hit the BVIs, and it created much devastation that took a toll on all aspects of identity. So I linked a video that you can watch from the PowerPoint that explains the heartache it caused on the island, but it also shows how the island is still recovering, but the people on the island are going to come out so much stronger than they were before. So I want to hit a different note. kind of moving away from the 4 aspects of identity, I wanted to connect the BVIs to 2 texts that I learned from our course. So to begin, I looked back at Mary Prince's The History of Mary Prince. So the history of Mary Prince kind of connects back to olden times as slaves acted, and it offers true accounts of slavery and abolition. So personally, the part that touched me the most was the personal experience of Hetty. Here's a quote from The History of Mary Prince. "To strip me naked, hang me up by the wrist, and lay my flesh open with the cow skin was an ordinary punishment for even a slight offense." This horrible excerpt is a slight example of the dehumanizing treatment seen in Mary Prince's slave narratives. And after extensive research on the history of the BVIs, I found a lot of information of slavery on the island. As globalsecurity.org states, it was one of the most important aspects of history in the British Virgin Islands. It was slavery. So although I couldn't find specific experiences similar to Hetty's, I did find actions that reminded me of Mary Prince herself. So this article writes that the most significant slave insurrection occurred in 1831 when a plot was uncovered to kill all the white males in the territory and to escape Haiti by boat with all of the white females. Although the plot doesn't appear to have been especially well formulated, it caused widespread panic and military assistance was drafted from St. Thomas. A number of the plotters, or accused plotters, were executed. It then goes on to say that insurrections like this occurred frequently after, ultimately led to the Abolition Act of Slavery on the island. So this quote kind of connects greatly to the history of Mary Prince and her story, but also to many other texts that we dissected through the course, as it touches on horrible states that the territory once was, but also the powerful measures taken to abolish it. I then looked at Raquel Cepeda's The Birds of Paradise. So Cepeda, the author of Birds of Paradise, took an approach that differed from stories that we read in class. Cepeda had a memoir aspect in her writing that was engaging and eye-opening, and through her text she went back to her ancestors' roots and found a deeper meaning to her culture and identity in the Caribbean. In an interview done by Kelly Korducky in the Hazlitt.net, Cepeda speaks on her struggles identifying with a Caribbean background and what that truly means. So something that natives on the British Virgin Islands and those who have ancestors from the island struggle with too, as there's so much unknown. She states, "We try to forget any part of ourselves that isn't white or European. In school, I learned that all the indigenous people that were Dominican Republican were eradicated in the first few decades following the Spaniards' arrival. But now we're finding out through ancestry DNA that these people survived, alphabet in fragments, and in Dominican and Caribbean people." She means that people in the islands are not given the badge of honor that someone with a typical background is given. There are pieces missing to the heritage of those in the Caribbean, which is sad and quite frankly not right. But it would be interesting to be able to connect with a native from the BVIs and see if they agree with Cepeda in her words from this interview and further her words from Birds of Paradise. So, to touch on something a little bit lighter, you may be wondering why I kept referring to my trip. My trip, although I was only 6 years old, was the best trip of my life. I remember truly feeling like I escaped paradise. So on my slides, I have a few pictures from this trip, and one picture has me and my brother on Salt Island watching a local make shell necklaces, and another photo has me and my cousins on Peter Island posing for a picture with those mountains and ocean in the background. So Peter Island and Salt Island are one of those 32 smaller islands that make up the BVIs. And one memory from that trip that kind of stands out is when I contracted an ear infection and my mom and I had to find an ENT as soon as possible. But we found out that the ENT was behind a dive bar. So there my mom and I go behind the bar full of crazy people to the ENT who happen to be so helpful and down to earth. So I felt like this story really encompassed the vibe on the island. Helpful and fun. So to conclude, I wanted to answer the question, how will reading and interpreting the course text from this class on the Caribbean literature help you beyond the classroom? As upfront as I believe it is an important question to wrap up this presentation. The texts from our courses have allowed me to appreciate a culture of which I would have never taken the time to learn about otherwise. I have learned that the Caribbean literature stems from real-life accounts and horrific events. Before coming to class, I truly thought that we were going to learn about the island life and how modern Caribbean citizens learn. I would have never predicted that I would learn about the slaves, more specifically Hetty, who had such an impact on me. I thought that the slaves like her were only here in America, but that's a testament to our education, how obscure and narrow-minded it is. The texts that we read were specific and informative, and I now have a greater appreciation for those who come from the Caribbean, and I understand why they are proud to be from there. Their ancestors have incredible stories and an incredible way of getting those stories out into the modern world. So that was to wrap it up. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.